Inspiration for what seems impossible can arise from the most unlikely sources. In 1970, one man drew on his childhood memories to gain insight into Soviet naval secrets. For years, James F. Bradley, who served as the Undersea Warfare Director for the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence, had been working on a way to secretly tap into Soviet communication lines. As the story goes, during family vacations in his youth, Bradley would go boating on the Mississippi River. He recalled how there were warning signs advising boaters to steer clear of certain areas to avoid dragging their anchors over underwater cables. This memory sparked a realization. Around Soviet naval bases, similar underwater communication cables might connect the Soviet high command to their submarine installations. Bradley suspected such cables must exist, and if they could be found, the U.S. might be able to tap into them and intercept Soviet communications. He proposed a top-secret mission to deploy a submarine to the Russian coastline, searching for any warning signs that might indicate the presence of these cables. The idea sounded far-fetched. The crew would have to scan roughly 600,000 square miles of ocean for something that might not even exist. Nevertheless, Bradley received the go-ahead. In December 1971, Operation Ivy Bells was launched. To carry out this seemingly impossible mission, the USS Halibut was brought back into service to lead the effort. $70 million later, the submarine featured diver hatches, a photography darkroom, and thrusters for keeping a stationary position. A subsequent update in 1968 at Mare Island saw the installation of video and photo equipment, tapping and recording equipment, and saturation diving equipment meant to prevent nitrogen narcosis in divers. More importantly, USS Halibut was adapted to operate two remote vehicles called Fish, with a storage bay going by the nickname the Bat Cave, and a top-of-the-line mainframe computer for analysis of sensor data. The Fish vehicles could swim down to 20,000 feet and were equipped with cameras, a sonar, and strobe lights. As with many intelligence-gathering operations, there was no definitive evidence, no smoking gun, to prove that such a cable actually existed. Compounding the risk, this mission involved sending a nuclear-powered submarine deep into Soviet-controlled territorial waters. This meant placing the entire submarine and its crew in peril, operating for extended periods in frigid, hostile waters under constant threat. This was a mission for only the bravest. The Halibut remained at sea for over a month, all the while evading Soviet naval patrols. The crew's nerves were taut as the captain raised the periscope to scan the island before them. A risky move, as detection would blow the mission entirely. But against the odds, they found what they were looking for, a warning sign. This discovery gave them a clue about where the cable might enter the sea. They began examining the seabed, looking for physical hints. Subtle rises and humps in the terrain gave them leads, and eventually they uncovered the cable they had been searching for. It must have been a moment of celebration, tempered by fear. They had discovered a Soviet secret that was likely under heavy protection. However, they faced one major challenge. The cable lay 400 feet beneath the surface, almost 4 times deeper than what conventional scuba diving could reach. This depth pushed the boundaries of human capability. But James Bradley had foreseen this. Long before the Halibut's departure, the Navy had been developing new deep-sea diving techniques, including a helium-oxygen mixture that allowed divers to survive at extreme depths. By mixing helium and oxygen, divers would be able to stay underwater for longer at deeper depths without suffering from nitrogen narcosis. The success of this method represented one of the very first instances of saturation diving. Thanks to this technological advancement, the team was able to proceed. The divers exited the compression chamber, marking their first such dive in enemy waters. At these extraordinary depths, they groped through darkness for nearly an hour before locating the cable. Their next task was to wrestle a 20-foot-long listening device made by AT&T's Bell Laboratories into position along the cable. They used an induction technique, placing a 20-foot-long apparatus around the 5-inch width of the cable without cutting into it. The wiretapping instrument was designed to detach in case the cable was brought to the surface for repairs. Since this was before the digital era, the device used magnetic tape to record transmissions. Once the equipment was attached to the cable, it had to start recording. So, before surfacing, the divers had to press the record button manually. Just a few months later, Naval Intelligence received the initial recordings, and they instantly knew they had struck gold. One of the most astonishing pieces of information revealed that in the event of war, the Russians planned to withdraw their submarine forces northward beneath the Arctic ice cap. This intelligence allowed the United States to anticipate Soviet naval movements in the event of full-scale war. As a result of this operation, the U.S. now had a strategic edge, knowing precisely where to intercept the Soviet fleet if World War III erupted. This was no one-time mission. The operation continued for 9 years. Divers had to be dispatched repeatedly to retrieve and replace the magnetic tapes. Each time, it was a life-or-death operation. AT&T's Bell Laboratories even improved their instruments and created nuclear-powered devices that could gather data from an entire year. Other submarines were also used, including the USS Parche, USS Richard B. Russell, and the USS Seawolf, which was almost lost during a tape collection as it was stranded at the bottom of the ocean following a storm and was almost self-destructed to scuttle the ship and the crew. But in 1980, satellite imagery revealed a formation of Soviet warships directly over the tap site. After they eventually departed, the USS Parche was sent to investigate. The tap was gone. Operation Ivy Bells had been compromised. And so came the end of one of the most effective maritime surveillance and signals intelligence gathering operations ever conducted. As for the Operation Ivy Bells recording device taken by the USSR, it resurfaced for a display at the Great Patriotic War Museum in Moscow. For years, no one knew how the Soviets had uncovered the tap, until 1985, when it was revealed that a National Security Agency employee named Ronald Pelton had been selling secrets to the Soviets. Pelton was reportedly in $65,000 of debt. The KGB paid him $35,000 for 3 years of service. Additionally, he was compensated $5,000 specifically for details on Operation Ivy Bells. Throughout his treasonous employment, Pelton never provided the Soviets with any classified documents, but rather relayed what he knew from memory. During Pelton's trial, NBC News disclosed details of this top-secret operation to the public. Yet much of the intelligence collected during Ivy Bells remains classified. Still, it's widely believed that the information gathered played a pivotal role in the 1979 nuclear disarmament efforts. If this story pulled you in, you just unlocked one secret. Ready for the next? There's a whole Cold War beneath the surface, and we're just getting started. What would you risk to prevent World War III? Drop your thoughts below. Thanks for diving in. And remember, sometimes the wildest stories are the ones that actually happened.